Oscar, it's been a big thing in this build-up to this last few weeks. You're back and forth with Eddie Hearn.
Okay.
I want to ask you, when do you remember this starting? When did this first issue of you and him start? Did it start with you or did it start with Eddie?
It did start with Eddie. It did start with Eddie because Eddie's a type of promoter that doesn't have the farming system that we have, like Top Rank, like Golden Boy. We know how to build fighters from the bottom, And what Eddie once did, he signed a couple of fighters in America that were already built, and he claimed, well, I built them and I'm the best promoter. Well, no, you're not. And so our back and forth is actually great for boxing. Our back and forth is like, look, and that's why if we can stage a 5-5 with me and Eddie, maybe even a 6-6 where me and Eddie can go at it,
I'm going to ask.
I wouldn't mind that.
The fights that you suggested, I think he's accepted all of them.
Beautiful. If he accepts the fights but the only condition I will give, and I will speak to His Excellency, I want a small ring.
How small? What size are we talking?
I wish it can be 16 by 16.
18 is normally the small one, isn't it?
18 by 18 is normal regulation. I believe we can go to 16 by 16. If we go 16 by 16, I think Eddie will retire.
And there you have it, guys. Oscar De La Hoya agreeing to the 5 versus 5 because he got word that Eddie Hearn has agreed to the 5 versus 5. However, I do wonder about the 16 by 16. I think that's asking for too much from Oscar because I've never really heard of a 16 versus 16. The standard is 18. Now, if he would have said, well, we can have an 18 feet ring, foot ring, 18 by 18, that would have made more sense because it's like, okay, that promotes more of a fight and less space to travel or to move if you're a fighter that likes to travel and move, right? But 16, that's just like almost like asking for something that is not even regulation. So I do kind of question that, honestly. Now, as far as the origin of Eddie Hearn in Oscar De La Hoya, where Eddie says, well, I'm claiming to be the best promoter or whatever, and I built these fighters, and he's like, that's not true, and that's where it started. I think that's petty. But of course, that's the promotional game. So, Oscar De La Hoya had a lot of stuff to say about Eddie, but I don't remember him saying anything about any of the fighters that Eddie claimed to build up. What we heard that Oscar saying, Eddie, go home to your own country. Don't come here. You're not welcome here. This is not for you. This is not your place. Your place is in the UK. So promote UK fights. That's what we heard. You know what I mean? And that is the reason I really think that Oscar has a problem with Eddie, because Eddie's coming and pushing in on his turf. That's what this is about. I think it's a turf thing. And I think him wanting to fight Eddie Hearn, which I have another video coming about that specifically because he mentioned more of the same about fighting Eddie. I think that's more ground towards, his frustration for Eddie Hearn because of the things that he's done in America. See, understand this, okay? If Eddie was such a bad promoter in the U.S., if he was piss poor, if he was pitiful, if he was under the radar, he wouldn't be talked about. If you're doing something good, that means someone's talking about you. The more haters you have, the more than likely you have a lot of people that support you. You know what I mean? So a lot of people that hate on you, they have a reason to hate on you. There's motivation because you're doing something that they don't like. Okay, that's the fuel to hate someone because they're successful. That's what's happening in this situation with Oscar De La Hoya. Okay, he does not like Eddie Hearn because Eddie Hearn is, believe it or not, like it or not, successful also in the USA as well as the UK. Okay, that's what this is about. So him saying, oh, well, these fighters, specifics, who are you referring to? You know what I mean? Then we can make a fair question of if that's accurate or not based on who they are, because we'll know if they were already built or not. But he's not saying anything. Show and tell, show and tell. You know, you're telling us everything, but you're not showing us nothing. That's the same shit that Oscar's doing right now. Okay, we're learning here, people. So Oscar De La Hoya saying, oh, well, you know, I'll agree to the 5 versus 5 or 6 versus 6. You know, it just shows you, especially the 6 versus 6 himself versus Eddie Hearn, a guy that doesn't even fight. That's like some Jake Paul shit to me. Anyway, you guys tell me what you think of Oscar De La Hoya and his talks about the origin of him and the beef with Eddie Hearn. Of course, please subscribe. And you guys been Counterpunched. Peace!